Alright guys, welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we are going to discuss why are Ubisoft games so generic. Now I have said this many times. I can't even count the amount of times I've said this, is that every time I play a Ubisoft game nowadays especially, I just feel like it's generic and boring. But recently, again, I have been playing a few games in the background. I really haven't been making many videos. But recently I have realized that that's not really the case. If you take an isolated Ubisoft game and you just focus on that particular game, it's not a very generic game. Like, it might still be generic, but it sure as hell is not boring. But that's if you isolate it from every other game. So now in this video, I'm going to get into why Ubisoft games feel so generic and feel so boring, even though they are not necessarily bad games. Like, they feel really bad. They feel like they are substandard games, but they are not. And in this video, that's exactly what I'm trying to explore. Now, one of the reasons why I feel Ubisoft games really haven't taken off in the recent times is because they haven't innovated. Like, Ubisoft is still using the same Ubisoft mechanics from almost 2017 onwards. Like, from 2017, especially since the launch of Assassin's Creed Origins, we have seen a clear shift in the Ubisoft design philosophy. That design philosophy being Witcher 3 was really cool, so let's rip it off. And we have seen that effect in virtually every single game that Ubisoft has put out since. There are a few exceptions to this rule, but we have seen it. And with that comes the biggest problem. If your game is no different from what everyone else has to offer, then why should I consider playing your game? Like, there should be one hook, right? Now, I have said this in my Cyberpunk video, that even though the gameplay itself is nothing special, like, really the gameplay systems in Cyberpunk are really almost bad. Like, they're not finished, they are bad, they are really not innovative per se. Now, why do I still enjoy that game? The reason being that even though the gameplay is serviceable, the stories that it's telling through its side quests, the various gameplay activities that it does have, even though they are generic, at least they're doing something to keep me hooked. Something Ubisoft has not done for a long time. The presentation of Ubisoft games have been lackluster for a long time. The cutscenes suck. The storytelling, I don't even want to go there. Like, yes, I enjoyed Valhalla's story. I've said that multiple times. But it has its own issues. Issues that I have talked about in previous videos, where I've said that Valhalla is not too long, it is poorly paced. And with games like Odyssey, it's just straight up stupid. Like, the story of Odyssey does not make sense, even if you just consider the game of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Even if you consider that one game, that story still does not make sense. That is just something that is. Writing has never been really that great point for Ubisoft for the last 10 years almost. So then what is the hook for Ubisoft games? Like, what is that one feature that makes me want to play Ubisoft games? Is it the open world? Well, that brings me to my second point. Well, it's very much not the open world. The open worlds in Ubisoft are very, very, very bloated. And not in a good way. Like, yes, you can make a very huge open world, but then that huge open world should be there for a reason. And the reason can't just be that I get on a fucking horse and just go around the world doing absolutely nothing, or just killing random bandits along the way. That should not be the hook for a game. That just isn't. Like, if you look at a game like Horizon Zero Dawn, like, I've played that recently, I've even made a review on it. In that game, I would say the gameplay systems, they were not that good. Something that I did say in the review. Like, the underlying RPG systems in Horizon Zero Dawn aren't that great. So what is the hook for that game? The hook is the excellent dinosaur combat. Like, you need to strategically think how you want to defeat a dinosaur. A robotic dinosaur. It looks cool, it plays really cool, and so there is at least some hook there that keeps you in the world. That's something that's not present in any of the recent modern Ubisoft games. Like, if you look at something like Ghost Recon, they have turned it into an open world looter shooter for some goddamn reason that I can't explain. They have done that, and not only did they do that, they have made it so generic that you're just killing random robots. Like, now you might be saying, hey, you are also killing robots, in Horizon Zero Dawn. So what's different? The difference is one is not grindy, the other one is, and B, these are robot dinosaurs which has specific weaknesses that you need to exploit. You can have multiple ways to kill these robots. Meanwhile, the robots in Ubisoft games are just damage sponges. Like, yes, they do have weak spots. Let's be honest there. But they are more damage spongy than the other one. And I'm not saying that this is a particularly good system even in Horizon Zero Dawn. I'm saying it's an acceptable system. And something that is worse than that is clearly not acceptable, at least not to me. Now that brings me to the next point itself, the lackluster features. Like in these games, you will see a lot of gameplay systems. Like if you pick up Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I would say in terms of gameplay systems, this thing has the most amount of gameplay systems in any of the recent Ubisoft titles. Like it's not even close. It has naval combat, it has mercenaries, which is just a Shadow of War thingy that they just ported over to Assassin's Creed essentially. It's not original, but hey, it's there, it's doing something. There is the enormous order menu that they had, that you had to kill off all the branches and stuff to get the gear systems, so to get the gear pieces. There is a lot of underlying depth in Odyssey. But, there's a big but here, none of those features are particularly well fleshed out. Like, when you kill a member of this cult, nothing happens. You just go into the world, they die, and you kind of read the description on their page. You look at previous games, you look at other games, you look at previous Assassin's Creed games. When you kill a target, when you assassinate a target, there's a conversation there. There's a conversation even in Valhalla. So they did improve upon that. But in Odyssey, where there is this huge amounts of gameplay system, none of those are fleshed out. The mercenary system just is. It's just there. It almost feels tacked on at some point. Yes, it will give you endless amount of content. It gives you endless amount of replayability. But why would you want to replay that? Like, yes, the idea was, it was going to be this repeatable boss battle. Like, you are getting new bosses every single time. But it wasn't that, because the gameplay became absolutely, it wasn't that because, when you got to a high enough level, it's just easy, even on Nightmare. Like with my build, I can one-shot everyone. Now, you might say that, hey, get a different build. And well, my build has its disadvantages. If I go into open combat, I'll pretty much die instantly with one hit. So I can't be hit when I'm in combat, because I will die then. So that's kind of a good thing about Odyssey, but I'll get to those later. So my point being that even the features that are implemented are not deep enough so that they can have a meaningful impact. One of the biggest culprit for this is Watch Dogs Legion, a game that I really enjoyed, a game that I can see having enormous potential, but it's just not there. The gameplay system that is within it is excellent. But once again, it's not fleshed out. Like, I've praised it a lot, especially during my top 10 games of the year video. And I'm still going to praise it because the way the system works, it is mind-blowing, honestly. But then again, there is nothing to really complement that system. There is nothing to complete that system. Yes, you can recruit different characters, but most of those characters suck. There is no way you can train those characters. There is no way you can customize those characters. And just having hair or what are the other customization? I don't know, lipsticks, earrings, whatever the fuck. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about proper playstyles. Something like that would have really improved the system. Like having a system where essentially you have one ally in your team teach another character how to do their business. For example, suppose I don't have a hitman, but I have some character which is silenced pistol. Now I can take a hitman and tell that hitman to train that character with a silenced pistol, and now I have a really good hitman, and now that other hitman just retires. Like every time you train a character, you have to retire that other character. Just for gameplay reasons. Doesn't really make sense, but for gameplay reasons. Now, with those kind of systems, that could have been really well fleshed out. And especially with better multiplayer content, people might be jumping right into those games and really enjoying them. But currently, they are not. I am willing to bet that not many people are playing Watch Dogs Legion, even though it is one of the best games that came out last year. I can say that. I can absolutely say that Watch Dogs Legion was one of the best games that came out last year. And it was one of the best games Ubisoft has put out since forever. That's just how it is. But since they didn't flesh out these features, it just stands in a place where people are like, yeah, it's cool, but not really. Now moving on to the next point, and this is a point I have kind of already covered in the last 3 points, but it's kind of a culmination of these 3 points, which is the focus is all over the place, and since that is happening, there is no consistency in these games. Like for example, I'm now taking the most recent Assassin's Creed game that Ubisoft released in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Now what does this game actually want to be? I still to this day do not understand what this game wants to be. Is this a Viking simulator? Because it's a terrible Viking simulator. Yes, you can raid, but what's the point? After the first 2-3 raids, is the same gameplay. The combat is lackluster. The enemy types, even though at first I thought the enemy types will really make a difference, they don't. Even the river raids mode that they did add, they are terrible, because even with level 5 Jomsvikings, they just die from random archers because the AI is so unsophisticated that they literally 5 Jomsvikings that I have, all fully upgraded, cannot take out one archer. They all got taken out by that one archer. So even the gameplay systems that are there aren't good. The focus clearly wasn't that. The focus wasn't on the assassin things, like they showed off social stealth in the trailer, but you can barely use it. The stealth barely works in this game. So then, who is this game for? It's like when you look at these games, you see that they're trying to cast a net so wide that they're missing basically all the fish that they're supposed to catch. Like the holes in their nets are so wide that the fish just go through anyway, and they just don't catch many fish. It's a fishing analogy. I don't know why I did that, but I did do that. Now, when you look at that, when you see the kind of games that Valhalla or Odyssey is, or even the Far Cry games are. Now, I haven't played Far Cry 6, and I don't plan on playing Far Cry 6 for, well, anytime soon. I'll see if I'll get it on a sale or something, but I'm not going to buy any Ubisoft games at full price anymore. It's just not worth it. So my point being that with these more recent Ubisoft titles, the focus has been all over the place. Like in Odyssey, yes, you can fight for 2 factions, but why? Like, okay, fine, you are a mercenary, you can be hired by either of the factions, but then if you kill the head of a state, like there are like different states in the map, controlled by Sparta or controlled by Athens. So if you kill the leader of a particular state, then maybe you shouldn't fight for that state. Like, just imagine this scenario. I am the commander. You, the audience, are Cassandra or Alexios, whatever. You come to me and you say that, hey, I want to fight for you in the upcoming battle. And then I, who know that you just killed my leader, I'm just going to allow you. Like, yeah, come on in, fight for us. I know you killed our guy. I know you killed the guy who was responsible for leading us. But please come fight for us. Does that make any sense? But it's there in the game. Like, there has been no thought put into, details. And that's why these games are suffering and suffering badly. Like, yes, you can have a lot of fun in Odyssey. You can have fun in Valhalla. Ubisoft games are fun. I am not denying that. I love Ubisoft games. I have worked for them for God's sakes. And the reason why I even went to work there was because I love their games. And I want them to do better. But currently, this lack of focus is really creating a huge problem for all Ubisoft games. If you cannot focus on what you want from the game, do you want a good story? Do you want enormous amounts of gameplay systems? What do you want? Because if you want something, then please execute it properly. Don't half-ass it. And right now, in almost every single Ubisoft games, everything is half-assed. Now we move on to what is, in my opinion, the biggest reason why people have this Ubisoft games are not good. The biggest reason why Ubisoft games are not good, that the perception that people have that Ubisoft games are not good. And that is, there are so many games. And none of those games are different. It would have been a different case if those games differ from each other. But no, they follow the same formula. Like, for example, now I'm looking at the list here that I've made. Now, in the last 5 years, since 2015, here are some of the AAA studios and here are the games they have released. So for example, Rockstar released GTA 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2. Now technically, Rockstar released GTA 5 in 2013. That's actually 2 years before, but the PC port of it came out in 2015, so I'm still considering. Otherwise, Rockstar has literally released just one game. EA, they release FIFA pretty much every single year, which suffers from the same things that I just talked about in this entire video. But there are gaps in Battlefield games. Like Battlefield is a franchise that sometimes it does innovate. Now, that doesn't mean Battlefield has been going particularly well, because after Battlefield 1, Battlefield 5 tanked. And as much as people would like to say that, oh, it was because EA CEO was like, oh, if you don't like the game, then don't buy it, or the uncultured people or the uneducated people shouldn't buy it. By the way, he's an idiot. But my point being, the game itself wasn't that good. It was so similar that people just didn't bother. See a pattern here? If you keep releasing a game that is similar, but only with a few changes, people lose interest. But suddenly, when EA and DICE announced Battlefield 2042, everyone was overjoyed. Like, finally, it seems like Battlefield is back. It has its own issues. I will talk about those in a later video, but my point being, this is still a better way to do it. Then there were 2 Battlefront games, 3 Need for Speed games, which on surface would look like, hey, they made 3 Need for Speed games, they must be similar, but honestly, they were very different from each other. Actually very different. And then, of course, EA came out with the really good Star Wars game that was Jedi Fallen Order. And pretty much everyone loved it. It wasn't the most original game. Like, the idea is not the most original. But along with the Star Wars aesthetic, they really invested in making sure that the gameplay was good enough. It had depth. They made sort of a semi-open world, which was good enough. And people loved it. Now, would people have loved it if there was like a Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order style of game every single year? They wouldn't. And I can guarantee you that. And I'll get to that point later as well. Now, moving on to Bethesda, they have released Fallout 4, Fallout 76, which are fundamentally different games. Although Fallout 76 really wasn't a good game. And of course, they are releasing Skyrim for what is the millionth time. The anniversary edition that is going to break Skyrim for everyone. So good job there, Bethesda. But that's not my point. The point being just 3 games. CD Projekt Red, the disastrous Cyberpunk 2077 came from them. But then again, so did some other games, and those being Witcher 3, Gwent, Thronebreaker. Gwent and Thronebreaker is actually the same game. Gwent is the multiplayer side of it, Thronebreaker is the single player RPG side of it, and then Cyberpunk 2077. So that's 4 games, out of which 2 are very similar. Now we come to Ubisoft. Let's get there. Now, Ubisoft has released Syndicate, Origins, Odyssey, Valhalla, Rainbow Six Siege, For Honor, The Division 2, Ghost Recon Breakpoint, Ghost Recon Wildlands, Watch Dogs 2, Far Cry 5, Far Cry New Dawn, Anno 1800, Watch Dogs Legion, Immortals Phoenix Rising. And more importantly, I was exhausted by just reading that, but more importantly, most of these games are similar. They have the same RPG systems, they have the same shallow gameplay that Ubisoft is known for at this point. And honestly, the only few standouts from this list would be For Honor, The Division, which when it came out, I was actually very interested, and Rainbow Six Siege. And guess which games actually, are making money for Ubisoft for the last 5 years? If you guessed Valhalla, well, it is making money. If you guessed Odyssey, yes, once again, the sales figures are great. But none of these games even come close to Rainbow Six Siege. That is the best game that Ubisoft has put out in the last 5 years, and coincidentally, that is the one game that is nothing like any of their other games. So you see the point. When you take so many games that are honestly very similar and you put them in such a small time frame, people are exhausted with just playing those games. Every time someone plays some other game, they are like, yeah, we have already played this just with a different skin. And I cannot say otherwise. Like, I told a lot of people that you should really play Immortals Phoenix Rising. I played Immortals Phoenix Rising. I loved the game because it was like Odyssey done right. And I told a lot of people to play the game, and most people who actually tried, or even without trying, the general response that I got back was, hey, this is just like, Breath of the Wild, but like a generic Ubisoft Breath of the Wild. Why should I play this? And even though I know that the game is more than that, even though I know that the game will probably be more enjoyable than what these people are thinking before playing the game, I cannot really go and tell them that, just try it out and you will, have a good time, because I'm not sure they will. Because they have played these other games, and if they didn't like those, I am not sure they will actually like this one. So this is one of the biggest reasons why people are really burnt out by Ubisoft, is because there are so many games in this space of so few years. Like, just look at last year. You had Immortals Phoenix Rising, you had Watch Dogs Legion, you had Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and all of these games share many of the systems, Watch Dogs Legion being the exception here, but they still share a lot of the systems. And when you play one of these games, and suddenly you are like, I've been playing this game for so long. Why do I feel like I've played this game for 100 hours already? There's a reason why, and that is the reason. And all of these reasons combined is the reason why I think really that Ubisoft games are being knocked down from the position that they should be. In terms of story, Valhalla should be right on top with all the other games. Like, yes, Cyberpunk had a great story, but so did Valhalla. Valhalla had one of the best narratives I've seen in video games. Like, yes, it had a lot of filler arcs, and I've said that those really do take down the story a notch because the pacing is all over the place. I have said that. But if you just take the main story of Valhalla, it is extremely well written, it is extremely well acted, the dialogue delivery is good, the presentation goes between absolutely horrible to excellent within a matter of minutes sometimes. But overall, the story is really good. Then why is it that Valhalla never got the recognition that it deserved? It's because of this. It's because of these reasons. And if Ubisoft really wants to make a good game, please give your development teams some time to breathe. Give them time to actually think up something original. Give them time to make sure that the gameplay systems that are in the game are properly polished and fleshed out. Give them the time so that you're not releasing almost the same game, like 3 of the same games within a month. Do these, and maybe Ubisoft can, get back some of that goodwill that they used to have. Because Ubisoft did make some really good games at some point. They have lost their way since, but I do believe they can. Or actually, I kind of don't, because with the leadership of Ubisoft, you just never know. Alright guys, that's the end of the video. I know I rambled on for a long time, but honestly it's something that I wanted to get off my chest for a long time. Because I just hear everyone kind of dunking on Ubisoft games, and while I kind of agree, it just sometimes kind of sucks, Because I really do enjoy these games, and I really want them to do better. And I really hope that they will do better. They certainly have the talent for it, but who knows? Anyway, after that, all I can say is that if you did like this video, then consider pressing that like button and do subscribe to my channel for more content. As I said, I have reached 262 subscribers. I am really happy about that, but I would be even happier if I reach 500. So let's get there. And also, all that said, I really hope you enjoyed once again, and I will leave you guys in peace.